All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the webinar that we are hosting about the 2025 RFA. If you are here, I think it's very clear that you are interested in helping to administer the HOPWA program in your region or jurisdiction across the Indiana Balance of State. So we have a whole lot to discuss this afternoon. My name is Nilufar Asgari. I am your grants analyst for the HOPWA program. I have been at IHCDA for 2 years, so I am the main contact for the HOPWA program here, as well as your main contact for questions concerning the RFA. Without further ado, I'm going to get us started. So I'm going to lay the groundwork for how this webinar will go. I'll start by summarizing the RFA, giving you both a snapshot of the HOPWA program and a broad overview of IHCDA goals for those of you who have been project sponsors in the past or are currently project sponsors. Some of this information will be a bit repetitive. However, I think it's important to give a clear reminder of what we're doing and why we're here, just so we are all on the same page. I also am going to go over the funding eligibility criteria. I'll explain the required scope of services that all prospective project sponsors will have to go through and complete. I'll give a timeline of the RFA process based on what we do know about the RFA process and some other factors. I'll go through the components of the application. I'll give some additional relevant information and reminders and allow for questions at the end. So for everyone in the room, I think it's safe to say that HOPWA is the federal program and the only one that we know of in existence that is specifically dedicated to the housing needs of low-income people living with HIV/AIDS and their families. It's been established in the 90s thanks to the AIDS Housing Opportunity Act of 1992, and it's administered by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD for short. And it primarily gives rental and utility assistance, but it also connects clients to federal, state, and local resources, especially with bridging both the housing and the healthcare resources together to help clients and their client households survive and thrive. Our goals for the HOPWA program that we administer across the Indiana Balance of State are as follows. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we're funding housing and health resources to support those living with HIV and their loved ones. We want to make sure that project sponsors that we work with are all able to spend the HOPWA funding. And we also want to make sure that we're able to maintain compliance with HUD regulations, as well as guidance, notices, and other sources from HUD on spending and program operations and development. So as we accomplish all the goals outlined in this slide, we will also be counting on project sponsors to help with that either through directly administering the program or through other tasks related to both spend down and compliance. If your agency is going to be a project sponsor for fiscal year 25, we have laid out the funding eligibility criteria on this slide and in the narrative of the RFA. And so first, the first requirement is that the organization applying must be a 501c3 as defined by the Internal Revenue Code. The organization that is applying should not have any unresolved findings from IHCDA or HUD. Additionally, we want to make sure that there's staff or board members from the organization applying that has attended Regional Planning Council on the homeless meetings during the 2025 calendar year. I will correct the slide once I send this out, as well as the recording of this webinar, so don't you worry. An organization that is either designated by the IDOH as a non-medical case management provider or has a formal agreement with a provider. So there's two ways to meet that, either being designated as a non-medical case management provider or by having a formal agreement with a provider. That will be the way that you would meet this requirement. You also have to have a certificate of consistency with the State of Indiana Consolidation Plan, which refers to the 5-year plan that IHCDA submits to HUD. We also are looking for project sponsors that have standards of financial accountability conforming to 2 CFR 200, specifically the 2 CFR 200.302 and 2 CFR 200.303 for internal controls. If you become a project sponsor, you'll have responsibilities related to program management and service delivery, as well as grants administration. For program management and service delivery, you will be required to enter client level data on HMIS, or if you are using, if you do serve survivors of domestic violence, you may also be using DV Client Track. For any project sponsors that need access to one or both of these systems or have staff that need access to one or both of these systems, we have our HMIS team that can help you with that, and we will connect you with them once the RFA period is over and we give you your funding decisions accordingly. Next, you would be responsible for complying with annual FMR and rent reasonableness requirements. You'll also have to make sure that you're complying with property inspection requirements, lead-based paint requirements, and making sure that you're successfully executing rental assistance payment contracts with tenants and landlords. Additionally, we want to make sure that at least with the program management and service delivery side, your organization has consistent internal policies that help maintain and protect the personal client level information as well as health status information. We want to ensure that all information is protected according to federal, state, and local law. And we want to make sure that new and existing staff members at your organization are adequately trained in HOPWA service delivery. So becoming a project sponsor, at least with the program management and service delivery side, would entail these 4 different types of responsibilities. The RFA does go into more specifics in the narrative PDF. However, the slides show all that information condensed into a few bullet points. We also have condensed the responsibilities associated with grants administration, just so you have a summarized list of what the grants admin side would look like for having a fiscal year 25 award. So we'd want to make sure that on the admin side that you're able to successfully utilize your grant throughout the contracted term, that you're able to meet reporting deadlines and claim submission deadlines, that you are running your program operations and administrations that comply with relevant laws, regulations, and guidance given at the state, federal, and local levels. Making sure that you have timely communication with IHCDA as your grantee, regardless of whether it's award inquiries, any documentation requests that come from our side or the compliance team side, any issues affecting grant utilization and other issues that come up, or even questions regarding certain eligible expenses, just making sure that there is that open line of communication there. We also ask that project sponsors that work with us also attend relevant webinars, office hours, or trainings that pertain to the HOPWA program. So for everyone that is applying through the 25 RFA for the HOPWA program, you will be submitting a form through JotForm, which is the platform that IHCDA is utilizing. There is a hyperlink right over here that will take you straight to that application. And unlike previous years where we have asked you to submit an additional Excel document via email, you will be entering your line item budget request and place your documentation in the form. So this is the only so really the only thing you have to turn in is that application, and making sure that you answer all the required questions associated with that application. The application employs conditional logic. That means that you're going to see certain questions appear or disappear, or be required or not be required based on how you answer. So we want to make sure that everyone completing the application is aware, and that you are double checking the answers that you're providing, so that the questions that come up for you make sense, follow logically, and are questions that pertain to the specific circumstance of your organization. If there are any issues or questions about conditional logic, or especially how it's showing up on JotForm, you can always contact me. I will go through the components of the application and make sure to let you know which tabs employ conditional logic, so that you'll at least have a better idea of what to expect when completing the form. The good thing with JotForm is that you can save your application progress. So JotForm allows you to go back so that you don't have to do the application in one setting. What will happen is that you will have to give your email, and then the JotForm platform will send you the link to the draft in progress. So I would make sure that you type your email correctly, and that you are able to access the draft that you have completed. If there are any issues with that, please let me know, and we'll do our best to assist you. The form also includes a variety of questions ranging from multiple choice and drop-down questions to essay responses, and also request for file attachments. So keep in mind that there's approximately 9 sections that have some questions or all questions required, depending on how you answer. So make sure that you double check the answers that you're providing before going on to the next page. As far as timeline is concerned, we would like your completed applications by July 28th, 2025. The application will be due at 5 p.m. Eastern. So please keep that deadline in mind as you are working towards completing your RFA submission. You'll notice that it's highlighted, and that's because that is the timeline that we have as much control in making that binding as possible. And we want to make sure that at least everyone meets this deadline, so then we are able to get decisions and contracts finalized as soon as we can. There may be, as you may have seen on the bottom of this slide, you'll notice that the contract will start on July 1st, 2025, not 2024. And that is because Oftentimes we experience slight contracting delays with HUD. So you will receive contracts and they will be backdated to allow you to claim for July 1st, 2025. Okay, so now I'm going to give the highlight of what the RFA contains. So these sections are listed out in order as they appear on the application. We have an introduction section, the budget request that you would like to have for fiscal year 25, the questions about threshold requirements, information that you need to provide about financial management, experience with service provision, staff and board of directors information, additional attachments. Most are required, but there are some supplementary attachments. And you'll also sign your submission before sending it to us. Okay, so we're going to start by talking about the introduction. So this section is basically all just the questions about your organization. We want to know the name of the agency, both the name as it's legally shown and your DBA or doing business as name, which is especially important for those who employ both. We also want your UEI number and your employer identification number. We ask for that just to make sure that we have that information on file before contracting. You will also have the opportunity to provide contact information, both for the organization or agency at large. We ask for information for the CEO or executive director. For some agencies that have someone else signing on the behalf of the CEO or ED, we will ask for the contact information of your contract signatory. And for those who indicate that they have program staff that will need to be in the loop regarding their award, you'll have the opportunity to give information regarding your program staff as well. This tab employs conditional logic specifically for the signatory in case your CEO or executive director is not the one signing, and program staff members if you have additional program staff that you would like to have in the loop of your award, specifically other than the CEO and ED and other than the signatory. Next, you'll be able to submit your budget request. So on that tab, you'll see all of the line items in which you are able to submit your request for. The amounts that you provide should be given in US dollars, and if you need to use decimals, please use them. We ask that prospective project sponsors, please be mindful of the federal spending cap on administration. So HOPWA regulations stipulate that project sponsors may spend no more than 7% of their award on administration. So keep in mind that regardless of what number you put in the administration line item, that we will do additional math on the back end to double check that the amount that you're receiving in admin actually shows that we are working to comply with that federal spending cap. Now, as you enter all of the amounts that you're requesting for your line items, you'll see the grand total auto-populate on the bottom. So it'll start by showing the tenant-based rental assistance or TBRA line item, and then it'll go down all the way to administration, and then right below administration, there will be a little box that shows the grand total of all of the line items that you have requested for. Okay, next will be on the threshold requirement questions. This is the tab where you really want to be careful with how you answer the questions, because there is conditional logic employed. And with regards to the conditional logic that is employed, you want to make sure that you answer correctly, because if you accidentally indicate that you don't meet threshold on one or more of the questions, you will encounter this response, and it will not allow you to submit an application. Now, if you believe that you are actually eligible for the RFA, and that you accidentally indicated that you said no even after double checking, I strongly urge you to contact our team so that we may have a better idea of what's going on. Moreover, while I do think that the JOT form will allow submitters to do the form again, I'm not entirely sure. So I really strongly advise all applicants to be very careful with this tab, so that they don't have to go through the process of having to certify to us that they are actually meeting the threshold requirements. Okay, so the threshold requirement questions are all yes or no questions. And depending on how you answer those questions, if you say yes, we ask for documentation, and we will look through the documentation that you provide to ensure that you do meet the threshold that we ask you to meet. Now, there are a couple of differences between the narrative that we have provided and what you'll see on the application form. So with the UEI number, we ask about UEI in past years as a supplementary attachment. However, we're asking about it sooner, just so we can make sure that the number that you are providing on page 1 shows in page 2. And also, we just want to make sure that the system that we're using, it's showing that the, excuse me, we want to make sure that the system is recognizing the attachments and that there aren't any contracting delays later, even though it's not technically on the narrative. Likewise, the RFA narrative also asks that you don't have any unresolved findings with HUD or with IHCDA. We will contact all applicants regarding any questions that we have about that. Granted, we would know on the IHCDA side whether there are any unresolved findings between your organization and us. However, if we will also contact with any questions regarding that to make sure that you meet threshold, just because there's really not a way to give documentation one way or the other regarding the unresolved findings part of the threshold. One other thing I'd like to note, the Regional Planning Council on the Homeless question about the meetings that you've attended, you can find the form that you need to complete for that on IHCDA's HOPWA webpage. That form has been updated to reflect the 2024 and 2025 year. Likewise, the certificate of consistency is also on our website. So you'll be able to fill out that form and make sure that you get the signatures associated with the certificate of consistency with the con plan. Next, we will ask you questions about financial management. This tab, this section, really, it has a mixture of multiple choice and short answer questions. And they're all really general questions about accounting, auditing, any procedures that you have to manage federal funds. We'd like to know about it. We also ask you questions about your experience with federal grants. Really, we want to know if you've received non-HOPWA federal grants in previous years, and we want to make sure that we have additional information regarding whether you have experience administering any grants from IHCDA, whether they're from the HOPWA program or not. This tab does include conditional logic. So we want to make sure that you respond carefully and accurately in this tab. When it comes to the section on the form about financial management, I guess it won't be as dire of a circumstance if you accidentally make a mistake, because you can correct your answer here, your answers depending on the logic that's employed. However, the threshold, as I want to remind everyone, the threshold requirement questions are a lot more painful. So make sure that you keep that in mind. When it comes to the questions on financial management, we do have a couple of questions that employ conditional logic, namely, does your organization perform its own financial accounting? And if it doesn't, you'll be asked to name the information for the contractor you work with. We ask about whether your records are maintained using electronic software, and there's conditional logic associated with how you respond to that. There is conditional logic regarding how your records are backed up. We also have conditional logic regarding your auditing. So if yes, you'll see additional sets of questions, and if no, you'll see another set of questions. We also have conditional logic regarding your previous experience receiving federal grants outside of the HOPWA program. So if you answer yes, you'll be expected to list all of the grants that you have worked with in the past. From there, you will be answering questions about your experience with service provision. So we'll ask you about your years of experience working with persons living with HIV or AIDS. This answer should be in the number of years, as just a reminder. And the answer can be all encompassing, regardless of whether your organization has ever received IHCDA's HOPWA funding, or even if you've received HOPWA funding from another jurisdiction. We will also have a set of essay questions for you. So 2 of the essay questions are as follows. Please provide a brief description of your organization's mission and services, and specifically what your organization offers for the region that you serve. Please discuss your experience with HMIS. What technical issues has your organization experienced with HMIS reporting? Does your organization need HMIS technical assistance or training? That is all in one question, and we strongly encourage that when you answer the essay questions, that you make sure to answer all parts of the question. If you are an applicant that has not received IHCDA HOPWA funding in the past, you can simply indicate that either you don't have any experience with HMIS and would need assistance or training to use the system correctly, or that you have some experience from using it for other grants that you receive outside of the IHCDA or maybe outside of the HOPWA program, and you can detail your experience through that. We do have a couple other essay questions. We'll be asking about your organization's experience in serving youth, veterans, VAWA eligible clients, or those who experienced or are experiencing chronic homelessness. These are specialized populations that are tracked through the HMIS system, and we want to make sure that if there's any special services or interventions that are directly offered to those clients, whether directly from the project prospective project sponsor, or if it's through referring the clients to another provider or another resource. We also ask if your organization is an active member of any regional or local HOPWA planning or community planning committees other than your Continuum of Care or your Regional Planning Council on the Homeless. We also strongly encourage you to outline if there's any coalitions or committees that you're a part of that specifically allow you that opportunity to bridge housing and health, or with this grant, given that it is very specialized for those living with HIV or AIDS, any coalitions or committees that are dedicated to centering the needs of those living with HIV or AIDS. So when we are reviewing your essay responses, we are going to look at the following factors. We have really 4 factors, give or take, that we will be looking through when you submit your application. 1, do your essay response answer all parts of the essay question, and are there complete sentences, reasonable grammar, just something that makes sense. We want to make sure at the very least that the answer that is provided is clear, that answers the question, that really showcases what your organization does to serve the region and counties, cities, and towns that you serve. We want to know if the applicant shows an aptitude in balancing the direct service provision alongside with making appropriate referrals, just in case either capacity or just in instances where another organization specializes in a specific type of service or resource, making sure that the applicant in question is connected to all the resources in their community is very important to us. We want to know if there's really any practices that the applicant takes to make sure that they address the specialized needs of those identifying as youth, veterans, if those who are VAWA eligible, or those who experienced or are experiencing chronic homelessness. We want to know if there's really any specialized procedures or services catered to those subpopulations and the extent to which your relationships with other providers help bridge resources for these subpopulations. We also ask about your involvement with the different coalitions and committees. We just want to know if you are involved, and if yes, to what extent, just because we want to see what that interconnectivity is like on the ground. After you answer questions about your service provision, you'll be asked about your staff and board of directors. Some of the questions also employ conditional logic. Really, there's not that many conditional logic questions, but do keep in mind that regardless, there are 3 questions to be careful of. 1, how often does the board of directors meet? Depending on the answer that you provide, you'll be asked additional questions. 2, does the board include a committee to provide fiscal oversight? Depending on how you answered that question, there will be a set of questions that appear or disappear given the answer that you provide. And also, how often do HOPWA staff undergo training related to confidentiality protections? Again, depending on what you provide for that question, you will be asked to provide answers to additional questions. You will also be asked to provide additional attachments in this section, namely a list of your current board of directors and their contact information, and a staff or organization chart of your HOPWA staff. So really, this is more so of the section that tells us more about who is at your agency and what jobs are performed at your agency, so that we have a better idea of um, what's going on and even potentially who we should contact regarding specific inquiries that we have about your award. We also have a tab for supplemental attachments. So we will ask you to provide attachments outlined in this slide and the next slide. We will ask you for the certificate of completion for 2 HUD modules, both for specifically the HOPWA financial management module and the 2 CFR 200 online module. So if you have completed the trainings for both of those, or at least have a staff member that is submitting claims that needs to complete these sections, these are, we want to make sure that the staff that is administering the claim submission process will have that training done. We'll also ask prospective project sponsors to give us their current policy by which HOPWA clients are selected and approved. Please do not send us any documentation for current HOPWA recipients or any clients. We want to protect personal identifying information, and sending that information through your RFA will reflect very negatively. We strongly discourage you again from sending any specific client level information. Just send us the general policy for how you are making sure that you're figuring out how you're going to serve your clients, which clients are able to meet the threshold for your program, and so on. We want to see your agency's confidentiality policies and procedures as well. HOPWA employs a set of requirements to better protect the health and personal information of the clients that are served through this program. So we want to make sure that prospective project sponsors have policies and procedures in place to protect that information. We will also ask you to provide a blank housing plan or outline. We will ask you to provide the tracking sheet that you use to show that you're serving individuals at or below 50% AMI, which is area media income. If you have PSH in your area of service, we want to know if you have an MOU in the area that your organization covers. If there is a grievance or dispute policy, make sure you attach that. Also, please attach the termination of HOPWA assistance policy in case you do have to terminate assistance. This year, we have given all applicants and prospective project sponsors the opportunity to attach additional attachments. This is completely optional, so you are not required to give us additional attachments, but it is an opportunity for you to provide additional information to better contextualize your application. So maybe you have an addendum to better contextualize your request, or to better showcase why you are eligible for funding, and or why you would be a project sponsor that IHCDA would want to or need to contract with. If you want to showcase the services that you have provided, either through other grants that you've received, or through other resources that you offer to those in your region, that could be an opportunity for you to showcase that. You can also show documentation if you do have HOPWA experience, showing that you have that experience to successfully administer HOPWA assistance, maybe through a whole variety of either maybe you've received testimonials, maybe you've had other things happen or other accomplishments happen that you're really proud of. This could be the way for you to showcase anything that we haven't necessarily asked for, but you feel puts your best foot forward. Again, just as a reminder, this is optional, so you're not going to be penalized for not including anything. You're not going to be penalized for including anything as well. There may be instances where we may have questions, but the simple disclosure of anything that you believe puts your best foot forward is not going to hurt you. Okay, so now I've gone through all parts of the application. And I want to give a few more nuggets of information and reminders as we move forward. So first, I'd like to talk about the evaluation criteria of the RFA response as a whole. Now, recall previously I talked about the evaluation of the essay responses that you provide in the service provision section, but this is more so the overall way in which we would evaluate the entirety of your application. So in addition to meeting the funding eligibility requirements, we also evaluate IHCDA's capacity to meet your funded request. And oftentimes that depends on the amount IHCDA receives from HUD. So a lot of this is a numbers game too. We try to meet as much of the funding request as we can. But we also ask that project sponsors be mindful of the fact that we are receiving funding from HUD, and sometimes the math needs to work in order for us to be able to contract. We can't contract more than what we receive. We do, for those who are a project sponsor that has received funding in previous fiscal years, we'll look at your spending progress. If you have not been a project sponsor in previous years, then this may not apply as much since we don't have any idea of your spending progress in previous fiscal years. If it's the first time that you've received an IHCDA grant or your first time receiving IHCDA's HOPWA grant, then there's going to be more emphasis on other factors. We'll look at what your service provision looks like, which we have talked about previously in this webinar. We'll make sure that you actually completed the application and that unless the question allows, that you've answered everything. And again, as we talked about, like making sure that you're providing clear answers. So overall, my general advice is to start early. Make sure that you gather all the supplemental documentation for your application submission, since there are so many attachments that we do ask for. Additionally, if you are interested in sending additional supplementary attachments that you believe put your best foot forward, you want to make sure that you're able to contextualize all of those and gather those documentations so that you can submit. And make sure that you're prepared to answer the essay questions in the RFA application, and make sure that you do answer all parts of the question. You do have the ability in JotForm to double check your submission before submitting it. So make sure that you've answered all the questions that you need to answer. When in doubt, ask us, or namely myself, Nilufar. If you're having issues with JotForm or there's other concerns that you have that may impact your ability to submit your RFA, let me know. Best case scenario, we're definitely going to try our best to help you so that you are able to apply and put your best foot forward. We'll also make sure that you have your questions clarified as soon as we can. Just a few other important reminders, and this is more so of like really, like if nothing else, if you took away nothing else from this webinar, keep in mind the fact that this is due on July 28th at 5 p.m. Eastern. So be mindful of that deadline as you work through the submission process. We will only look at completed applications. If you have any concerns regarding whether we've received your application, please let us know and we will do our best to confirm and respond to you as soon as we are able to. We will not accept late submissions unless approval was granted beforehand. We will also not accept any applications that have not been submitted through JotForm. So please only use JotForm to submit your application. The nice thing about JotForm is that you can save your progress and you can review your answers before submitting. So for anyone who has concerns about having to do the application in one sitting, you do not have to do it all in one sitting. You can save your progress. Just make sure that the email that JotForm sends you to go back to your application is sent to you and that it works. If you have any issues with ensuring that you have that, please let me know and I'll see if there's anything that I can do on my end to make sure that you get that information. On this slide, I have both our community services team email address as well as my email address. So if you have any questions, concerns, or if you need to schedule some time to talk offline of this webinar, please let me know. I'm very happy to have those discussions and be a supporting resource as you complete your RFA. Okay, so that is the end of our presentation today. I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll start sharing my screen soon, but then I'm going to look at the questions in the chat first, and then I'll see if there's additional questions from the team. So first, is there a way to work in JotForm and save it to come back later? Yes, you can save it and come back to it later. Is there a way to see all of the questions ahead of time to be able to work outside of the form and then enter the info? And is it possible to get a copy of our submission after it is submitted? After it is submitted because, okay. So as far as all of the questions ahead of time, the slides are basically going to be that. And the reason I say this is because if I were to provide a PDF of all of the questions that JotForm has, it's a very counterintuitive PDF. I have no control over how it's presented, but essentially it is a very confusing PDF. And so I'm telling everyone, you really don't want that PDF. It's going to cause you more pain than you think it'll help you. So I would strongly advise that you rely on the slides. The essay questions are verbatim those questions. Worst case scenario, if you just enter nonsense information and then go back and change things, then you'll be able to see the questions presented in a way that makes more sense. So hopefully that is the way that you can go about that part. Can you get a copy after it is submitted? I believe so, but I will check on that because this is my first time using JotForm for IHCDA. So for that part, I will need to check. As far as the webinar slides being posted, I will finalize the slides and send them to our communications team. before I send at the very least, I know it'll take some time for the communications team to get that up. So as a courtesy, I will send everyone registered for this meeting a copy of the slides in PDF form so that you are able to review the content and have a better idea of what we're expecting for this application process. Still have time for more questions, so if you have questions, please type them in the chat. Yes, let me see. So we have someone that wants to ask several questions. I'm going to see if I could. Okay. All right. Candace, I think I turned your mic on. You just have to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. It's just so much easier to ask instead of typing. I do have a couple questions.
Sure.
One is that you asked for the updated HUD exchange training certificate. Our administrative assistant did go through the HOPWA online module back in 2024.
Okay.
Does he need to retake it again, or can we just submit the one that he took in 2024?
You can resubmit that.
Okay, all right, perfect. And then my other question is, within the essay or the narrative questions, is there a word limit? Are you able to?
No word limit.
Okay, so you can expand the boxes. Perfect. And then my last question is on the threshold requirement questions, 501c3, attending the regional planning council. If you answer yes, then do you upload that document after you answer? Okay, because I noticed it wasn't in the supplementary attachment, so it gets uploaded there.
Okay. So we implemented this year. We made sure to put the questions along, so the multiple choice with the request for attachments, just to keep it more streamlined. And then the attachments that we want from you but don't necessarily have a great place to put them in, we put it in a supplementary section.
Perfect. And then the one last thing, it's not a question, but I was able to print the entire application off once I went into JotForm. I just right-clicked my mouse, hit print, and it printed the whole thing. It didn't print, the conditional logic, if you answer yes, but it did print all the questions in the entirety, including all the attachments.
Did it show what you printed? Like, would it show all the questions itself, or did it show I'm sorry, I'm thinking while I'm trying to speak. Did it show all of the questions in there, or did it show just what you've answered according to how you answered?
It showed all of them. It showed all of them except for the ones that if you have the conditional logic question and if you answered yes, obviously that didn't print off because I just printed, I did the first page and then I just printed it and it all printed except for those, like I said, those conditional logic questions.
Okay.
If you answer yes.
But okay, we do have someone in the chat that's interested. So can you repeat how you did that for them?
Yeah, I just went into the link into JotForm. I just right-clicked my mouse and I hit print, thinking it was just going to print that page, but it ended up printing the entire application.
Okay. Thank you, Candace, for providing that. That's very helpful. And I'm sure everyone on the call greatly appreciates that. So there's another way to getting the questions. So
it works for me. And if anybody needs me to, I guess I can email it to them if they can't. And I'll put my email in the chat. But I was able to print the whole thing off. So
yeah, when I went on my end to produce the PDF of this application, it gave a bunch of nonsense. And I didn't want to provide that for you guys only because it was so nonsensical that I had a hard time following. So I didn't want to put that up on you all. Are there any other questions? Does anyone want to be unmuted? Does anyone have anything else that they would like to ask about while we're here? Going once, going twice. All right. With that, oh, I see another person typing. Okay. Okay. All right, if there are no more questions for anyone on the webinar, then we will end here. Thank you so much for attending the session. We will get the slides out via email as soon as we can, and then for the recording, we will also work with our communications team to get that posted on our website. If you have any other questions as you're completing the application, please let me know and we'll work with you to get them answered. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday.